picture this. On a tiny, wind-battered island, three men are on duty. Their job is incredibly simple. Just run the lighthouse. But then something happens that no one has been able to explain to this very day. All three men suddenly vanish without leaving a single trace behind. Welcome to This Explainer. I'm so excited to have you here as we decode one of history's absolute most fascinating and, honestly, chilling puzzles. Okay, let's dive right in. Seriously, just take a second to imagine the sheer impossibility of this situation. How do three able-bodied professional men just vanish into thin air? We are basically talking about the ultimate locked room mystery here. Except, this locked room is a rocky island completely surrounded by the vast, unforgiving ocean. Let's look closely at the facts we have from the source material to see how this whole puzzle came together. Let's start with Section 1, the isolated Flannan Isles. Now, to truly wrap your head around how baffling this is, we've got to set the scene. Picture the remote west coast of Scotland. It is an incredibly lonely, isolated place where literally nothing existed except the crashing waves of the sea, the howling wind, and one old lighthouse just standing tall against the elements. You were completely cut off from the rest of the world out there. Right at the end of the year 1900, three trained professionals were stationed on this remote rock: James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. Their job was absolutely essential: to maintain the light and make sure that passing ships remained safe from the treacherous rocks right below them. Moving right along to Section 2, Timeline of the Disappearance. So, we know who was there, but how did things take such a dark turn? Well, around early December 1900, everything was completely normal. Operations were running totally smoothly. But then, weather reports indicated a massive, incredibly strong storm had hit the area. Now, it's super important to remember they had absolutely no radio or modern communication systems back then, so when no messages came from the lighthouse, it wasn't immediately suspicious. That was just kind of normal. However, the suspense really breaks on December 26th. A passing ship looked toward the island and noticed the unthinkable. The lighthouse light was off. And in their line of work, a dark lighthouse is literally the ultimate red flag. This brings us to Section 3, Eerie Clues Left Behind. When authorities finally managed to reach the island, what they discovered wasn't some clear-cut crime scene, but a bizarre, super eerie collection of clues. First off, the lighthouse gate was securely locked. Inside, everything seemed perfectly fine, but then you noticed the details. Their tea was still sitting completely untouched on the table, and some chairs were flipped over, almost as if someone stood up in a massive hurry. Yet there was absolutely no sign of a struggle, no bodies anywhere on the island, and literally zero clear explanations for what prompted them to leave. Crazy, right? Based on the official investigation records and the logs left behind, authorities tried to piece together a procedural sequence of their final moments. It seemed to unfold in steps. Step 1. Evidence suggested the first man exited the lighthouse early during his shift. Step 2. The second man quickly followed him out. Step 3. The third man, eventually, followed right behind them both. And after that final step, they just vanished into thin air. One by one, they walked out into the storm and never returned. Which leads into Section 4, 4 prominent theories. Look, when you have a massive void of actual evidence, human nature steps in and tries to fill it with theories. Because nobody could firmly prove what happened, 4 primary hypotheses emerged over the years. First up, we're comparing the two most plausible physical theories, the storm theory and the accident theory. The storm theory suggests the men went outside during that terrible weather, and a massive, freak wave simply swept all 3 of them right off the rock into the sea. On the flip side is the accident theory. This proposes a really tragic rescue attempt. Perhaps one man fell from the treacherous cliffs, and the other 2 rushed out to save him, ultimately falling victim to the environment themselves. Continuing our comparison, we have to look at the internal and the unknown. The mental breakdown theory points to the extreme psychological stress of total isolation. Being trapped on a tiny rock in the middle of the ocean can absolutely cause severe confusion or panic, leading to some irrational decisions. Then there's the unknown theory. Some sources note that people actually believe an unexplained, perhaps even supernatural force was involved here. These theories really just show how desperate investigators and the public were to make some kind of sense out of this vanishing. And finally, Section 5, a century-old mystery. So, let's bring this analysis back to the present day. We have the timeline, the clues, and the theories. Why does this remain totally unsolved? Well, it all comes down to some massive gaps in the investigation that make this an unsolvable puzzle. First, there were absolutely no eyewitnesses to tell us what actually went down. Second, no bodies were ever recovered from the sea or the island itself. And third, there's just no clear evidence that elevates any one of those four theories from a mere guess to a hard fact. Without those three pillars of an investigation, you basically hit a permanent dead end. And the staggering results of those missing pieces is 120 plus. Over 120 years have passed since that winter of 1900. Despite more than a century of modern technological advancements and deep historical research, this mystery remains completely, utterly unresolved. I really want to leave you with one final, chilling thought. If three highly trained lighthouse keepers can completely vanish from a tiny island, what really happened out there? The truth is, the answer remains hidden, swallowed up by the sea. It's a pretty wild reminder of the raw power of nature and honestly the limits of our own understanding. It definitely leaves us all desperate to know more. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope these slides helped structure this totally fascinating mystery for you. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.